Welcome to my tutorial of Dodo for the PC. And this is the easy medium, which is the default setting. And in this game, it requires you to complete both loops of the game to get the true ending of the game. If you only complete one loop, you don't get an ending. So basically, there's 4 unique stages, and it has a loop. So after you beat 4 stages, it will loop. And the next 4 stages are going to be the same exact, but they're going to be quite a bit faster. So it's going to be a lot harder. And the problem is you don't have save states in this game, so you don't really have a chance to practice the second loop and get it down. So, it took me around 2 hours and 28 minutes to beat, since you really don't have a lot of time to practice that second loop. If I was playing it if it was an arcade game, I'd be able to save state on the second loop and really practice it, and cut down my completion time. But that does make it harder. There's no continue, so it's a 1cc game. But you do earn lives every 15,000 points. Now, if you get the glowing donuts, you will get more points. So I recommend trying to grab them when they are close to you, but I wouldn't go out of my way to get them, since I wasn't playing for score, and I found I had plenty of lives without trying to grab them. But I would get them if they were close to where I was. But you see, I moved through the stages very fast, and there's definitely a rhythm to the stages. So I wouldn't go out of my way to get the glowing donuts unless you're playing for score. If you're playing for score, then you want to get all the glowing donuts in the order that they appear. They appear in a certain order. So you get one glowing donut, then you'll get the next one. But the game, after you get through all 8 stages, the game ends. So if you want to maximize your score, then you have to get all the glowing donuts in order. So keep that in mind if you're going for points. But I was just going to beat the game. So for my tutorial, I'm just showing how I beat the game. So I wouldn't recommend doing that, because that's going to make it harder. But after you beat it, maybe you want to do that if you want to replay it. There's also a harder mode after this. So basically, it's just a rhythm to each stage, like what a lot of these old arcade games like this is based on. And, once you get the movement patterns down, you can kind of fly through most of the stages, as you see me doing. That's mostly what it is. So you see the way I'm moving through the stages, that's mainly what you want to try to duplicate. And you'll find a rhythm. After you do it enough times, it'll be very easy to do the first loop. The second loop was always kind of challenging for me, because I didn't really have a chance to practice the second loop, and it has a different rhythm. The rhythm is completely kind of fucked up for the second loop, because you can't just do the same exact rhythm you did in the first loop, because it's a lot faster. So it really does mess up the pathing. You know what I mean? You do have to find a different path. But you do get used to adapting quickly and reacting quickly in the stages after playing them enough. So you'll be able to make those tweaks. Eventually, it'll all kind of click into place. I got to the point where I had 6 lives at certain times, so it got pretty easy after a while. But it did take, like I said, about 2.5 hours for it to really click for me. Maybe a little bit less than that, but for me to actually get the full completion, it did take around 2.5 hours. So now you're going to see, after you beat the 4th stage, this is like the trickiest stage. I guess this is the 5th stage. So maybe there's 10 stages total. So this is the 5th stage. This is the final stage of the first loop. So this one is tricky, because you got to go through these teleport doors. And just keep in mind that the purple teleport door correlates with the other purple door. And it's the same with the orange and the red. They all correlate to the same color. So that's where you're going to teleport to. But you do have to get a rhythm with this and figure out, the path to get the donuts as quick as possible. And you do have to avoid everything, which is hard to explain without, memorizing the levels and getting a feel for them. So, you want to try to adapt best you can by watching what's going on, because it does change up, it seems. But you really just got to get good at, being able to switch paths and see what's going on. When the fireball is on that path, for example, you don't want to be on the same path as that large fireball. You cannot jump it. For this, you can make a wide jump to grab that last donut over the spikes. That's the trickiest one to get. If you don't jump far enough, you won't get it. So it can be kind of tricky. Just be careful when you teleport through that orange door. Make sure that the enemy is not right on the door when you teleport, or you will die. Luckily, you respawn right where you died, but there's not many invincibility frames. So many times I would respawn and then die immediately again, very shortly after. So be careful with that. This is a bonus stage, which is good to try to get as many of these donuts as you can, because they're worth a lot more points. I think each one you get is worth more and more points. It's like a multiplier type of bonus. So eventually some of them are worth over 1,000 points each. So it's good to try to get as many of these as you can, because like I said, if you get 15,000 points, you will get the next one up. So it's basically 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90,000 would be your one-ups that you could likely get in a single playthrough. So you can get quite a few lives. You see I have 6 lives now. But this is where it gets hard now. Once you've gotten the first loop down, now the rhythm is completely going to change. So you'll see you do have to react well. The control is very good, unlike Donkey Kong, so it does play much better. The only bad thing is whenever you go up a ladder, you zoom up the ladder or zoom down the ladder. You can't really adjust on the ladders. It's either all or nothing, so you got to be careful about going up ladders. Just make sure you have a clear path before you go up or down a ladder, because you will just go through the whole thing in one speedy kind of movement. You see, I was able to get through that fast this time. And I was basically able to do that just by adapting to it because I'm familiar with, the first loop, but I did have to change up my movement. And you will get used to it. This one is tricky with the screen transitions. When you go to the other side of the screen, you got to be careful because there's going to be an enemy coming at you as you move across the, you loop the screen. So just be aware of that. You can jump the flames. Remember, you can grab on the ladders in midair. The control is very good in this game. Much better than the old games from this time period. So you have complete control of everything. Very fluid control. I got kind of fucked there, Even when you know the stages, it's still tough. But this is not much harder than this stage in the first loop. The main stages that were harder for me were the first stage of the second loop and the fifth stage of the second loop were the main ones that I noticed a big difference. The other stages, I didn't really notice much of a difference in challenge. So if you're used to these stages, you can probably get through these ones easy. The first stage may be tricky, and the fifth stage in the second loop. But it is hard to really give tips because, you can see everything I'm doing on screen, and it's pretty evident. And there's really not much to say aside from, what you see, basically. But it was a quick tutorial. I figured I would add some commentary. As you can see, you can do all this very fast once you get it in a fluid motion. And when the donuts are glowing, try to get those fast. When you see the fireball coming at you, go down the ladder if you get a chance to do that. Don't try to jump it. You can't really jump that fireball, I don't think. If it's directly at you got to go down the ladder from what I noticed. But these are things that you're definitely going to learn. You're probably going to take a few hours to beat this, and in that time you should learn a lot of the patterns and get an idea of how to move through the areas. This is kind of just testing your skill of adapting to the stage, since it's harder to memorize this since you don't get a lot of time to practice the second loop, because you only get to try it when you've completed the first loop. So, it's going to take a while before you get a lot of practice on this loop. And there's probably some random elements, but I'm not sure. I don't know the game well enough to know how randomized it is. I know that I've memorized a lot of the first loop. The first 5 stages I could do pretty consistently. See, sometimes that bird does cross over through where that donut is when I'm trying to go up there, and you see I died there. Very sloppy, but I could have waited a little while to make sure that the bird wasn't going to run, so you may want to wait. But I'm usually super aggressive. I don't like waiting around, so I was kind of just speeding through the stages mostly. So now you see I'm on the final stage. This is the final stage for real this time, since it's the second loop. And I have 5 lives, so I'm in good shape. This was another stage. This one took me the longest to get used to with the teleports. It's a bit confusing. I'll definitely try the hardest mode next. And maybe I'll do a tutorial on that if I beat that. Watch out for the fucking toilet bowl. You can't jump the toilet bowl just like in the first stage. You can jump the green guy, and you can't jump the orange fireball in this stage because it's way too fucking big. Of course, you can jump the smaller fireball in the other stages, but not here. And you got to watch out for that green guy when you teleport through the orange door, because sometimes he'll be right on the door. Now they added ghosts to the second loop as well, so you got to watch out for them. If you see a ghost on the same plane as you, try to get away from it. Or let it arc over you or under you. It does go in kind of a up and down movement, so you can kind of go under it or over it. Unless it's right on your ass. So jump to get this final donut. Just remember, you do have to loop the screen. See, that's a hard jump. I missed it that time. You got to jump right from the edge to get that. So now I'm trying it again. Got it this time. Now jump across the spikes, and you want to get to that donut. It's a little tricky sometimes. Try to go through the warp here, jump down, and then cross this way. That's usually the way I do it. And unfortunately, I think this game, it would be better if they gave you the ending, but then if it still continued to loop and get harder, I think that would be better because then you could go for even more points, Unfortunately, this is it for the regular mode, so if you're going for points, the only thing you can really do to milk the score that I'm aware of is to collect the donuts in order, which, if I practiced that, I think eventually I would learn that too, and then I'd pretty much have maxed out the game. Maybe the next thing to do would be to do that in the hardest mode. I guess that would be the most challenging thing you could do, but you see, you do get the official ending when you do 2 loops, so that's how you beat the game. It's mostly just going to be practice and kind of routing, getting the paths down by just practicing the levels, you know what I mean? Stay tuned for a review, which will be coming soon. If you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for watching.